So, from Network Nova Live, it's March 15th, 2024. A couple more days, it'll be St. Patty's Day. So we hope we have your green ready and your green beer not so ready. But yeah, we hope you're getting ready. You are on the Friday Power Lunch, and I'm Catherine White, your host, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action. And what we do is we love to fuel the grassroots across Virginia and now coast to coast. And we love to get things done because we know together, folks, we are stronger and we are smarter. And of course, we do this every day. So let's just make it fun. You're on episode 11. Believe it or not, this is season 4 for us. Who knew we would be a media company run by women? Yay for us. Give the team a hand up here. Double clicks. That's what we're doing. And today our theme is water on the rise, because one thing we know about with the young voters, they're centered on climate. And this is one of the existential threats that President Joe Biden talks about. And we really want to make sure that we're addressing it because it's real. And we have guests that are going to talk about that. And what I love is about how they rose to the occasion to go after it and make people aware of it. So first, I want to make sure we welcome special guest. Simon Rosenberg is here. Give a wave. He's the founder of Hopium Chronicles, and he is the cheerleader of the Democratic Party this year. Woohoo! We're going to have to get him pom-poms because he is making sure that we are informed about what's happening. But he is a 30-year veteran of U.S. politics and founder of the Hopium Substack, so make sure you subscribe. And he'll give a sharp analysis today about what's going on in the election. Then we're so excited. We have some local leaders on this space. Marjorie Mayfield Jackson, welcome, Executive Director of the Elizabeth River Project. And what a great story. We'll hear from her. And then a favorite badass is back. We haven't seen her in a while. Andria McClellan, Norfolk City Councilwoman, and she'll be talking about coastal flooding. This is really her home. She knows a lot about it, and she has galoshes on today to really talk about that, because you do need good boots when you live down in Norfolk. And lastly, it's election time. Missy Smasal will be here. She is here. She is running. She's a candidate in CD 2 down in Virginia Beach. But who knew she's also on the Chesapeake Bay Commission in Virginia. She's a citizen representative, and she'll have a lot to say about that. And then we like to talk about her run for Congress. And lastly, David Pepper is going to be here from Pepper Perspectives and the author of Laboratories of Autocracy. I know you all read it. If you haven't, you got to get a copy. So first, let's get to some show business. Oh, yes. I hope you have your coffee in front of you. Rules of the road. Use the chat. I love to see everybody in the room. Hello, John Cluett. John and I are working on some democracy signs together. Hey, John, glad to see you in the room. We like to use the chat. Use the chat to talk about what you're doing, what you're working on. Are you working on voter registration? What are you going to do about it? Let's hear it. And also, after chat's going to be very special today. That's where we turn the lights down and you get to unmute. You get a turn to talk. But we will have special guest David Pepper really talking more about democracy and what's going on. So that's going to be a special treat. And if you support the show, you're awesome. We love you. And I hope you do, because I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Your support means a lot to us up here that do this every day. And when I say every day, that's what we do. And our newest patron is Ann Staffer. Thank you very much for joining the team. We love it. And remember what we like to say, folks. No one is coming to save us. It's up to us. And with that, let's go right and bring Simon Rosenberg straight up. Stephanie, hi, Simon. How you doing? We unmute.
Hey, Catherine, it's great to be back. Great to see all of you.
I'm so excited. And I think we're on Facebook Live. So we're doing a little live today stream. And I do think we do need maybe, you are, when I was teasing about the cheerleader thing, but you are the voice, the megaphone, and now the bridge with the grassroots into the higher echelon of democratic politics that's really helping tell the story about what's going on down here, and then making that bridge of how we're working together. So I wanted to have you on. Yep. Let's talk about where we are right now and get your feed, just get your take on that.
Sure. Let me make 2 basic points. One is just where I think the election is, and then a little bit of a comment about the evolution of the grassroots, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So first, where are we today? Listen, I have these 3 basic ways that I look at the election. First, that Joe Biden is a good president. The country's better off. We have a strong case to make for re-election. Number 2 is that the Democratic Party is strong. unified and winning elections all across the country, as we did in Virginia just a few months ago. Congratulations, everybody. And three is that they have Trump. And Trump is the most unfit man to run for president in all of our history. He's far more degraded, extreme, and dangerous than he was before. His performance on the stump is infinitely more erratic and delusional than it was even 4 years ago. And that when you move all these chess pieces together, right, and you push the chessboard forward, I would much rather be us than them. And I'm very optimistic about us winning the election. On polling, which I know we all talk about, I have two basic points, and I've done a lot of interviews this week with the New Republic and New Deal leaders, and even my own presentation I did this week with Anderson Clayton a few days ago. I've talked about how, first of all, in polling, we're not behind. Trump is not ahead. I mean, the polling, to be fair, is showing now virtually every poll is within margin of error. It's a very close and competitive election. And today, The Economist has a tracking poll. I mean, a tracker they do of all the polls to average all the polls together. And Biden's actually ahead in that tracker today by 1 point, 46-45. And so this, first of all, whenever we get up in the morning, Donald Trump is not winning the election. He's not ahead. I mean, what I like to say is that, to use a basketball analogy for you, Catherine, right, is that, we're at the end of the first quarter and the game is tied, and most of the game is in front of us.
Yeah.
And a lot of it will depend on how we perform and how we do, all of us, right? And that's what I want to get to the second point, is that about the grassroots. I think that the performance of the national grassroots in the Swazi race a few weeks ago, where we made 2 million phone calls in 5 weeks, where every household, we think, got 5 postcards, every Democratic household got 5 postcards. It sort of woke up the national party to the power that has now been built by all of us, that, we have built, whether we understand it or not, and because it's wildly disaggregated and decentralized all across the country, is that we've now built the most powerful political machine the Democratic Party has ever had. And what that political machine is doing is that it's turning a 1 or 2 point or 3 point Swazi race into a 7 or 8 point victory. It's pushing us again and again, the performance of the Democratic Party to the upper end of what's possible. Our campaigns have more money than they've ever had. We have that more money allows us to build bigger field operations. That bigger field operations is what all of you are plugging into with your postcarding and texting and calling and canvassing and all that you do. You need a large campaign to be able to absorb the kind of volunteerism that we now have with hundreds of thousands or millions of people who across the country who, out of love of country, are fighting every day to prevent their democracy from slipping away, like all of you, right? And so I think that Swazi race was sort of a Rubicon, not a Rubicon. It was a before and after moment in the national party. And I even just got an email from Susan Wagner, many of you know, from New York, who said that, they're getting very close to having now a grassroots coordinator in the New York congressional cohort, building on the model of what we did together in New York 3. I mean, I worked with Susan and others, and you had Nate and Jody come on a few weeks ago, where I was involved in helping design the Swazi race to make sure there was a person and a capacity to absorb all this work that was going to come in order for it not to be duplicative, right? And to make sure that all of you were working in sort of the most effective way possible. And this was really the first campaign, federal campaign, where we had that kind of coordination and that kind of strategy, and it was wildly successful. And I think it's convinced the rest of the national party. I've had conversations with the Biden campaign about this, with the DNC, with the DCCC. Susan went in to see the DCCC when she was in DC a few weeks ago. And I do think that there is a new appreciation and understanding about the power of everything that's being built here. And so congratulations, everyone. I mean, this was, this stuff was all notional, right? And the key is that as amazing as all of you are, and you run an incredible organization, I point to the Friday Power Lunch and the work that you do here all the time in my discussions with reporters and people in DC. And I always say, just go to the Friday Power Lunch. If you want to go see this stuff, in action, right? It's a great thing to go check out, and it's local. But this is also happening all over the country. And so the aggregate power of this is remarkable. So here's where I think we are, Catherine, right? We're in a close competitive election today, but many of these elections we've been winning, since Dobbs, we didn't know we were going to win, right? That we were hopeful that we could win. They were, in many cases, In some cases, they were uphill climbs, right? Like in New York 3, we lost that district just 16 months ago by 7.5 points, right? We
Right.
didn't know we were going to win in Ohio. We didn't know we were going to flip the House in Virginia, right? We didn't know that we were going to flip the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat with 56%. But we went to work and we did the work. And we took what was a close race and we turned it into a not a close race. I think that's what we're about to all go do together with the Biden-Harris campaign. And if you think about, what happened in the Swazi race,
Right.
2 million phone calls in 5 weeks. What are we all going to be able to do in 7 states over the next 8 months? It's going to be extraordinary. And so I'm deeply optimistic about where we are. I'm very grateful for all of you and what you do every day because you're giving us this extra superpower that Democrats have never had before. And I think it's central to the reason we keep winning elections all over the country. So
No,
thanks, everybody.
no,
Catherine, I'll turn it back to you.
no, yeah, I agree. And I want to say that what I am really hopeful for, because I totally agree, I feel like, we've been doing this work for a long time, and we knew in Virginia that actually our success was because of the grassroots, and specifically a lot of the women, the leaders that have led these organizations like Susan Wagner, Markers in New York. And what is cool, and the weird thing about COVID allowed us to do was to actually go on Zoom and realize we had the ruby slippers to find each other, right, all the time. And now I feel like what's the next level up we see is this collaboration, which I feel like you're saying, if anybody was on that Democratic call last night with Field Six, Team 6, saw hundreds and hundreds of people now working across the states on one issue that I think is where we need to be, is saying, okay, let's all work on voter registration right now because we can. And I love that what you're thinking on that. That's where I think we're gone is now.
Yeah.
Now we're moving this national space. I think it's a test beyond Swazi now. Now this is an interesting test in the waters Can we make this work? And I think we can because we're really working now together. I see it and feel it.
I would say 2 things about what's about to happen, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, the federal campaigns, the presidential race, the Senate races, the House races, and what I tell everybody is job one for all of us this cycle is Biden-Harris, right? That's the big one. We all have to decide what piece of that we're going to be part of. There's a lot of different ways to be involved, but that's job one. Job two is taking care of home base, right? In each state, in each community we live in, New Yorkers and Californians must take some of their work and make sure that we flip those House seats in New York and California. We didn't win last time. But then third is that what's about to happen now is that the federal campaigns are going to start asserting themselves dramatically in the states where these campaigns are taking place, right? They're going to start spending money. The grassroots organizations are going to start getting bigger. You're going to start really feeling them in ways that you haven't really felt them in the last year and a half. And particularly if you live in one of the 7 Biden states, right, in the battleground, those campaigns are going to start taking groups that exist, have to sort of figure out how to become plugged into those places in ways that are comfortable for you and under the coordinated campaign rubric, as we call it, right, which is where the table is. And part of what I've been working on with the DNC is to build a seat at the coordinated campaign for the grassroots, right, as a structural design issue. There's been a lot of conversations about this. I'm very optimistic about it happening. But the second point is, voter reg really matters. And we have not, this has not been a major priority for the Democratic Party in recent years for reasons I don't really totally understand. And if you take the memo that I wrote at the beginning of Hopium a year ago called Get to 55, what I argued was that this was going to be a cycle where, because of their escalating extremism, that more was going to be possible for us, that we could take away demographic and geographic targets that we had to expand our coalition and grow our vote, and to take stuff away from them. And we could imagine getting to 55% in the election and making it a blowout, not another one of these elections where we stumble across the finish line. Key to that is voter registration, right? I mean, it's the central way that we have to expand our coalition. And I just want to remind everybody that when I wrote that memo a year ago, what I argued was that this was a cycle of expansion and growth. And look what's happened, right? All these places where we were successful in the last year, it was all Republican-held stuff that we took away from them. It was about expansion and growth. It's why I'm so focused on North Carolina, for example, right? It's the most important expansion state in the battleground. And I think we have to just continually have a mindset of that we're strong and powerful and we're expanding and growing. We're not defensive. We're not reactive, right? We're setting our own agenda. We're a very
Yes.
strong and powerful party. We have a powerful argument to make. We need to grow our coalition, expand it in order to make this election a blowout. So it's a clear repudiation
Yeah.
of MAGA and this dangerous politics. This is within our power to do if we do the work, in my view.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so glad you came today. And I think when I have you back, one thing I do want to put in your mind before you leave is this ban on TikTok and the space that all of our creators are in on that, and young people are in on that, and their reaction to that. I think it's something, and that's really concerning to me. That's where we organize, and Gen Z, that's their space. So I want to say to you,
super complicated issue, and we should
super
talk about,
complicated, but before this election, and when Steve Mnuchin announced he wants to buy it, I said, everybody, please, we need to have, TikTok is awesome. So I just want to say that I think when young people see that the Congress works when it wants to and doesn't work on their issues and lets other things sit, they get more and more suspect of the system.
So Catherine, I just want to say, as you go into your climate and environmental stuff, I want to remind everybody that Joe Biden has done more to counter climate change and accelerate the energy transition than any other person in the history of the world. And that we have to go into this debate in a place of confidence and strength. That we've done our part here. There's much more to do, but we should not for 1 second ever be defensive about our commitment to countering climate change. We are the global leaders in this, not just the leaders in America. God bless. Love you guys.
Love you. Bye, Simon.
Keep up the great work. Bye-bye.
See you later. And I'm so glad to have Simon here. I'm so excited. So as the team gets ready for the next segment, as we know that our team just likes to get ready in the place that they spend a lot of their power time in. Is that correct? Yes, team. And I'm so excited because we haven't had our coastal friend back, Carrie Short. Oh, Carrie, hello. I'll let you just go ahead and take it in your kitchen.
Oh,
Carrie.
You. Yes, well, I'm Coastal Carrie. However, that's not the job that matters to me most today. I am proud wife of a husband who's clearly a man. He is a man. And I am also a proud mom of 2 kids, Brianna with an I and Brianna with a Y. But I'm worried about their future, the future of children in every corner of the United States. That's why I invited you here to my kitchen, which is actually too small for a table, thanks to Biden. But this is where our family gathers for making hard decisions, like when will the tide go down so I can go to the grocery store? And should I invite that anti-vaxxer kid to the sleepover? Well, it's also where we laugh together and we join hands and pray the gay away. I feel like the next generation doesn't have the same opportunities that we had. I mean, I know their home ownership is up and now Pinterest is full of all these Gen Z remodel boards. I don't understand it, but I think that once their student debt is forgiven, what more do they have to live for? But to think about the American dream and just what it can do across one generation if you're white and can amass generational wealth. It's truly breathtaking, which is why I'm speaking like this. I actually can't breathe. I can't get my breath. Anyway, the American dream has turned into a nightmare. President Biden's border crisis is a disgrace. It's disgusting, and it's almost entirely preventable. But it polls well with the MAGA crowd. So we just keep those empty chairs in the spotlight. My Republican colleagues and I just plan to keep blocking legislation and then changing the subject. Oh, look, it's a trans high school athlete on TikTok. But we've seen a lot of debt. And what really is disturbing is that there is debt up to $540 million in Donald Trump's legal debt. And it's despicable. And the cost of living is terrible. I can't give you real numbers because I know in the last 2 quarters it's been on the upswing, but I don't really understand. I don't know what's real anymore. I mean, I can see sea level rise from my window, migrants, I'm struggling. But Joe Biden, bless his heart, it's been a minute since he's pumped gas or used a shopping cart. But I will tell you that Donald Trump is well aware of Tucker Carlson's Russian shopping cart and everything that it holds. I mean, they have chandeliers in the subway. I can't make this stuff up. But clearly, just ask yourself, are you really better off now than you were just 3 years ago? Actually, don't ask that question. But we're the party of hardworking parents, and we want to support families and we want them to grow, which is why we are after your abortion care rights. And we support in vitro fertilization, which is actually, it's a new technology. We don't really know anything about it. But anyway, but to my fellow moms, I just want you to know that we see you, we hear you, and we can subpoena your menstruation data. You're probably just as disgusted by most of this going on, but never forget, we are steeped in the blood of true patriots who overthrew the most powerful government in the world just last January. We walk in the footsteps of pioneers who tamed the wild. And we now carry forward the flame of freedom that liberated an oppressed Europe, despite the fact that they didn't pay their NATO dues. And Ukraine's not even a member of NATO, so I don't even know what we're doing. But when we gaze upon the heavens and our DNA, just never forget that our DNA contains nothing but American red, white, and blue blood. Our history has been written with the grit of men and women who, after a public school education and a college work study job, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps with no government handouts. So together, we can reawaken the heroic spirit of a great nation because, wait, Catherine.
Scary Carrie, come back. Come back, Carrie. See that
Catherine,
woman at the podium?
What are
That's
you doing in my kitchen?
Well, I'm not. I'm not. I'm at the Friday. You're on the Friday power lunch. And I want to show you a real kitchen. I mean, a real woman at the podium. That's where you need to be, Carrie. What's going on with you? Snap out of it.
I wasn't consulted. I didn't know. I
It's okay.
apologize.
Look, take a gaze, gaze it, Kamala Harris.
It's all coming back to me. Thank you, Catherine.
You're on the Friday power lunch, and
Oh
we're
my
here.
gosh.
See?
Look at all these people. Okay, I get you.
Okay,
All
I'll
right.
let you
I'm
change
sorry.
change your background real quick.
I don't know what got into me.
It's okay.
Apologize.
Oh my gosh, I just love it. Let's give a hand for Scary Carrie. Woo!
All right.
You know
well,
what? You have a job on SNL and you will be, I love it. And I'm just like, our whole team was hysterical when you thought this up. So, we like to have a little fun, little fun around. So let's talk about the guest today. Let's go for what we're seeing in the water.
Well, I'm pretty excited to bring you three heroes really, but two, when we were talking about coastal flooding, I was excited to invite Marjorie and Andria here to help us understand about the hard work they've been doing to protect our environment from coastal flooding. Both of them are champions, so I'm excited about that.
I am too. And, I feel like I kind of like your other effectism. Can we call up Marjorie Jackson, and I'll get out of your way, and let's get to her great story. And I just want to preface it with this. Hi, Marjorie, great to see you here. That her story just inspired me, and it really shows again that we need people who rise to the occasion. So thank you.
Simon just called us superheroes, and I think when I think about superheroes, I always think about origin stories, right? Because there's so many movies coming out about superheroes and their origin story. So Marjorie Mayfield Jackson, she is the original executive director, the founding executive director of the Elizabeth River Project. She's done an amazing job with our own Elizabeth River and all of the little tributaries toward it. So I wanted to introduce you, first of all, as a superhero, but ask about your origin story, because it is, as Catherine mentioned, it's very inspiring. So welcome.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm kind of a little speechless. Don't know how to follow your kitchen act. But, let's see. We were started around the kitchen table, so I can a little bit shadow that. Back in '91, and at the time, people thought of the Elizabeth River here in Norfolk as dead, and didn't really have much hope for it getting better. People thought of it as a sewer, really, and some people didn't even know the name of the river. And as a group of citizens, we just wondered if we could pull together a different future. So started.
And what were you? Yeah, and what were you doing at the time? Please tell us that. It's a great story.
Virginian pilot. I wasn't covering the environment. I was an education reporter. And when I came home at night, I would go out on my dock, and there was a beautiful little corner of the river with fish jumping and night herons roosting, and a great place of solace and peace and beauty. But I tried to not look down because there were reports coming out about cancer in the fish. So at that point, after being a journalist for about a decade, I decided that journalists really, they're supposed to stay on the edges of things and not get involved and be observers. And I wanted to get involved. So I quit my job at the paper and volunteered in the daytime and waited tables at night. And it was about 3 years until we had money for staff. Now we have significant staff doing a lot of great things on the ground, and we've come a tremendously long way through grassroots support and political support and industry support on this river. Everybody pulling together to bring back the health of the Elizabeth River.
Right. Well, when Catherine and I were talking, we said you made a change in your life and it changed the world. I mean, it's just such an inspiring story because you quit your job. I just can't believe that you made that kind of sacrifice for the greater good and for our river, and it is really inspiring. But I think another inspiring thing about you, and you had just kind of alluded to that, is your ability to bring people together. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your experience bringing together people who may be perceived as on the other side of an issue, or maybe who have potentially conflicting interests, but you brought them all together. So how were you successful in that?
Thanks. And it's not just me. We're quite a group of board people and staff people and community supporters. But we have always believed that at the bottom of things, people do agree on common basic good, a clean environment, a healthy place for our kids. In fact, when we were first getting started, we would interview business leaders, and the head of the Port Authority at the time said, yes, the river's polluted and it ought not to be. It ought to be like the Central Park of our area. And so I would support cleaning it up, but don't point fingers. And so here you have 400 years of neglect and abuse on this river by everybody. Our cities, our homes, my home, a lot of people built where there was river and it's been filled in. And the top source of current pollution is runoff from all of our yards and streets and houses. So to find that place where you're not blaming, you're not yelling or criticizing, but you're calling people to a better future together and you're helping them get there. So.
Right. And you had said when we spoke earlier, you had also said not to assume ill intent, which I thought was something that I've certainly been carrying with me when you said that. I'm not sure if Marjorie is still with us. Are you still?
Yes, Marjorie might turn off your video to help out here. There
we go. Marjorie, are you still with us? I think we may have lost Marjorie. We'll give her a second to come back on. She had given us a really inspirational kind of comment about how she wasn't assuming ill intent among the people that she worked with, because for those of you who aren't familiar with the Elizabeth River Project in Norfolk, Marjorie has really helped bringing together the industry that uses our river and has used our river, as she mentioned, for 400 years. It's kind of hard to imagine another river in the United States that's been developed for over 400 years, but it has been. So we appreciate everything that she has done. And and she might be coming back.
Oh, that's.
All right. So we'll try to patch her back in if we can later. But Catherine, did we want to pull through on David Pepper? Or are we going to move ahead?
I think we'll go to Andria if you want to.
Okay, great.
And then this is what I'm thinking. We love to see Andria. And then if Marjorie gets the screen back on, she can come up in that segment.
Finish your thought.
I need those red glasses. I love them. And I'll hand it over to you guys.
They're fantastic. Thanks. Hi, Andria.
Hi, Carrie. How are you?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for being with us. All right. So Just a little transition here from Marjorie, who is helping with a nonprofit, the Elizabeth River Project, and bringing coalitions together. I just wanted to bring you to the table to have you help us out and understand. You are a local government official, and I really feel like Norfolk is ground zero on coastal flooding, and it is really responding in remarkable ways. You have been a big part of that. You've really come in and kind of taken charge of this. I know that Norfolk is one of the first localities to get Army Corps of Engineering money. So I was hoping maybe you could tell us what Norfolk is doing that's a little different.
Sure. So Norfolk is second only to New Orleans in terms of flood risk, which a lot of people don't realize. And certainly we should be talking about coastal flooding today, but I would say flooding is an issue throughout the entire Commonwealth. And I see we have lots of folks here from throughout the country. In Norfolk, we have subsidence, or our land is sinking for a variety of reasons. The seas are rising due to climate change, but we're also seeing increased precipitation in intensity and frequency. And that's leading to a lot of flooding throughout the Commonwealth, in addition to our flooded areas. I thought I could real quickly maybe share with you and the folks who are on what it looks like in Norfolk, not just after a storm or in a hurricane, but also in sunny day flooding as well. That's what we call it here. And sunny day flooding is essentially when our water, the Elizabeth River that Marjorie was talking about, actually comes up through the storm drains and floods our roads. So if you don't mind, I'll do a real quick screen share, give you
something I'm accustomed to seeing a lot around here. Sure.
Yes. So this is the road at the end of my street. That is actually a road. That is the road that I use to drive to City Hall. It's a little cloudy there, so it's not sunny day flooding, but it was, I think that was a king tide perhaps. But that road is flooded several times a month now for me to get to City Hall. So the good news is I can divert and go another way, but this is very real stuff. Again, that's a road. You should not be seeing a kayak. Another, this is right on the Elizabeth River that Marjorie was talking about. So if you could imagine, as those trucks are going through and as the water is coming up on our land, as it recedes back into the river, it also brings with it all the pollutants, all the oil, all the grease, etc. So that'll just give you an idea of what we're dealing with. In Norfolk, we have a climate action plan. I helped co-author that. So when you think about climate, you think about climate from a mitigation standpoint. How do we mitigate climate change? And then an adaptation point, which is it's here. How do we deal with it? And we have to do both. And that's a really tough conversation, I think, a lot of times, because I think the grassroots tends to want to focus on the mitigation piece. How do we electrify everything? How do we create energy efficiency, more solar, et cetera, more? And I do all of those things. But the fact of the matter is that those mitigation efforts aren't going to change the flooding in Norfolk this year, next year. Maybe in 20 years, we'll start to reduce its effect. So we really have to be doing both. You alluded to our Army Corps project. Thank you, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and our congressional delegation. We got a $400 million influx of funding for an Army Corps project, which is going to be $2.62 billion. And that's to address, it's called a coastal storm risk management plan. That only addresses storms. Okay. That's not going to address the sunny day flooding. We have another $1 billion of stormwater infrastructure projects to address that. And that's just the city of Norfolk. I think it's really important that we understand the size and the scope of this. And maybe because it is so big, it's scary and a lot of people just don't deal with it. But these are huge projects. And if we don't start to do these now and do the engineering, we'll never get there. And I can go on and on, Carrie, but I was gonna talk a little bit about
yeah. So when you and I were talking earlier, we were talking about how this is sort of a slow sludge, yet we're confronted with especially younger voters who are just, they appreciate the urgency, but not everyone does. So in terms of taking action, where are you getting your hope from? And what could you help us understand about that hopefulness? Because it is just such a long slog.
It is. And, when we have really important issues on the table from a funding standpoint at the local level, in terms of our schools and addressing gun violence and, simple things like streetlights, oftentimes those big infrastructure projects for flooding don't get taken care of. And so we just keep kicking the can down the road, and it's really, really frustrating. But my hope is we are looking at things from an innovative standpoint. We have something called RISE Resilience Lab, and we are working with young companies around the world to identify solutions to address flooding, flood insurance costs, et cetera. As a matter of fact, Norfolk is the first city in the country that has flood data about our streets on Waze. And that actually came through that resilience incubator. So I am hopeful there for sure. And I'm hopeful because our younger generation does get it, you know, and listen, when you talked about this, Carrie, earlier, when you can't get your kids home from school because the bus can't get to the bus stop, it's scary. I had a friend who actually, it took a stand-up paddleboard out to get our kids. She was in the galoshes, put the kids on the stand-up paddleboard, and you know, and brought it home. It is a very real issue.
And I think about we talk about climate justice as well. And some of our hardest hit neighborhoods are in the Tidewater Park area, which of course is being relocated because it was built in a floodplain, and it was low property value, so it's a perfect place to put public housing.
Yeah, and I would just say environmental justice is a huge issue. So if you think about redlining, which was the practice of basically governmental practice from decades of not putting infrastructure where it was needed, some of our poorest neighborhoods have the most flooding because of that lack of infrastructure. And as a matter of fact, that Army Corps project that I mentioned, because the Army Corps uses a benefit cost analysis that basically only values high value property, you can imagine what happened, which was we have a community in the South Side, historically lower income people of color there. They got left out. And the good news is the grassroots activists figured it out, and they lobbied the Army Corps and our federal delegation, and they're hopefully getting that fixed and added, and they will be the first in the country if this goes through, and I believe it will. We've got the support of Kane and Warner and Bobby Scott. This will change how the Army Corps values projects, and this comes from the Biden-Harris administration's EJ40 initiative, and
this will affect the entire country, because then Army Corps can use this as a model in other localities.
Yes, so and that's where grassroots really can make a difference.
Isn't that great? I love that story. That's the first time I've heard that story, but I knew they were left out. I just didn't know what the process was to get them back in. So you did become a subject matter expert on this. Thank you for that. You do your homework when you show up to a meeting. It's quite obvious when you go to public meetings with Andria McClellan. She's on the days, and people are, she's responding. She read the report, and you kind of see the blank stares around the table. It's kind of humorous to me. But how did you become such a subject matter expert? And you had mentioned that that's a good role for the grassroots activists to play in terms of advising public officials to help them out.
Yeah, I mean, as an elected official, I'll tell you, I have no staff. I represent half of Norfolk. I have about 120,000 constituents, and I have to do it all myself. So having grassroots activists and just smart people that everybody here is smart, who, if you know something about a subject, make sure that you're getting to your elected official and explaining that you can be a help. I don't have the time to always to do the research. Now, how did I do it? I'm a nerd at heart. And it's something that was really important to me. And it's one of the reasons that I ran for the city council and why I've tried to seek higher office, because the fact of the matter is this is a local, state, and federal issue. And all three areas need to be focusing on this. At the state level, we've had some move forward and some move back, depending on who's in office at the time. Actually, there was a great bill that was just passed with bipartisan support regarding our chief resilience officer. It was because of my knowledge and talking with constituents. A couple of years ago, we were finally able to get legislation passed that requires disclosure of previous flood claims when a property is sold. You can imagine that's a big deal, because that will change flood insurance costs. That took about 4 years to make that happen. So I would just say everybody needs to be thinking about this. And I'll one last plug, and I will say this about flood insurance, and that is, if it rains where you live, you should have flood insurance, even if you're not in a special flood hazard zone. A lot of the flooding that has happened recently in Virginia Beach, Houston, et cetera, happened in areas that did not require flood insurance. because of the rains that we are seeing. So investigate that and take a look at it.
Right. We saw that in Southampton, and we saw that in Franklin and those areas that really had devastating floods.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, Andrea, it's always great to see you. And where are you? Are you on a little trip or?
I happen to be in Florida at the moment.
Nice. Oh, another flooding or environmental place with concern.
Listen, Miami they are building like crazy, and I have no idea why. They sit on limestone and the water's just coming right up from the ground. This is,
it's a problem.
We're just for scope. We're thinking we're going to get 1.5 feet of sea level rise by 2050 in our region. And that is conservatively probably about 5 feet by 2100.
That's
So
crazy.
this is a huge, existential.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I know, so hopefully we'll see you soon. And I want to bring up Casey. Casey, do you mind coming up real quick? You're on the team. I know Marjorie got cut off. Can you just do maybe a last minute shout out for the Elizabeth River project as somebody that's been involved in it so we can give you some due time, and then we're going to go to Missy. If you can unmute yourself, Casey, and introduce yourself real quick. Hi.
Hi, I'm Casey Shaw. I'm with the Elizabeth River Project. I do think that Marjorie is back though. So
we'll have to keep on schedule. So we can pull her up real quick. Let's go ahead and spotlight her if she is on camera real quick. And let's just have like a little bit of just a quick summary of the project if we can. Stephanie, I don't know if you can spotlight Marjorie, but go ahead and take it, Casey.
Sure. So we're an environmental nonprofit, as Marjorie said, working here in the Hampton Roads area on the Elizabeth River. We do on-the-ground restoration. I know someone called out the restoration of wetlands. That's a big component of what we do at the organization. And then realizing that engaging the next generation. So environmental education is key to what we do. And then in our new chapter of river restoration after 30 years, we have the new Ryan Resilience Lab that is now on Collie. It is a model for the globe in how to develop in the urban coastal plain. We hope you come visit it. We'll put some links in the chat so you can check it out more.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll definitely have you back next time. Marjorie can't get her screen, so really can't highlight her. But you know what? Let me just say, impressive organization. And what I love about her story and what I love about today when we talk about, I see people in this room like Dennis Atwood over there. Rising to this occasion, when you have a story where somebody just happened, if she never lived by and moved by the river, we wouldn't probably have the level of progress we have. And I think that's what I love about activism, or in the sense of people stepping up to the plate. So Casey, we really thank you for being here today. And it was really a great highlight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of people stepping up, folks, we have this big national election and all of us are worried about it, and we're worried about keeping the House. And then it's really great when somebody steps up to run for that seat. And I want to introduce everybody. You may know Missy Cotter Smasal. Is it Smasal or Smasal?
Smasal, you got it.
Smasal. And I knocked doors for you and ran in 2019. It was a lot of fun coming down there when you ran for Senate. We have a nice little connection. So when I heard you were stepping up to run, very exciting. So I want to introduce you to the crowd here. And so I'd like to get your perspective as a person who lives down in the Tidewater area on that, what your concerns are about the Chesapeake Bay. You do sit on that, the Bay Commission. And also then as a person running for office, if that's part of your platform.
Well, thanks, Catherine. It's so wonderful to join you here today. And I love the enthusiasm. Thank you, everyone, for your time. So I do serve as the citizen representative for Virginia to the Chesapeake Bay Commission. And I think as activists and those of us who work in the grassroots, sometimes I feel like there's so much work and you're always just pushing forward. But I think because we have the 40th anniversary of the Chesapeake Bay Commission that we're celebrating, it's a good time to celebrate the wins and the progress. So the commission is a multi-state bipartisan body. We have 7 members from each of the member states, so Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. And we work on science-based legislation to protect the Bay and those of us who live in the watershed. And it's been one of the most encouraging opportunities for me because I've seen that we have Democrats and Republicans who care about the Bay and come together. And while we might disagree on so many other things, we've actually gotten substantial work done for the Bay. So it's just heartening to see that we can accomplish things when serious people come to the table, when they trust the experts and they work together to produce results. So I can't say enough good things about the commission. So some of the success, as population has increased, as agricultural practices across the watershed have increased, we have still been able to reduce pollution in the Bay. We have the world's largest oyster restoration effort in the Chesapeake Bay, thanks to so much work of the people on the commission, but everybody working across the Chesapeake Bay programs. And the one thing I do want to also highlight is the 1.6 million acres of protected land over the 40 years. So some successes. I want you to know that the good work does pay off in many ways. But as a resident here, yes, we deal with sunny day flooding. My son's bus stop flooded all the time. Hopefully we'll be moving that bus stop pretty soon. It's gotten that bad, but it's a concern for residents here across the 2nd District. And as a member of the commission and also as a Navy veteran, we've been able to spend some time on Naval Station Norfolk. And when we talk about stormwater concerns, when we talk about the rising seas and infrastructure problems that are caused, we really see it on the naval station. So that affects us locally, it affects us economically, but it affects our national security too. When you're driving around the naval station, there are sinkholes that are the size of cars, right?
Yeah.
On our world's largest naval base. And that is because we need to have the serious mitigation and resiliency efforts put into it. So looking at it holistically here in the 2nd District, we really do have to look at that national security implication of it as well.
Yeah, no, it's true. The national security is a lot of people don't really think of it that way, but really, I think most people that really understand the issue globally also see that it's really a threat. So now you're stepping up to run for office. Tell us about that seat in CD2. And we know that a lot of us in the room have knocked doors for Elaine Luria, who used to hold that seat. And now we have Jen Kiggins, a Republican, holding that seat. And our plan is to take that seat away and elect you. So let's talk about that race. How are you going to go in the water for that one?
Wonderful. Well, I will tell you, it is time to kick out Kiggins. So right after Super Tuesday,
yes,
she fully embraced Donald Trump with a strong endorsement of him. So it is time to kick her out. We as Democrats have held the seat for 2 out of the past 3 cycles. It's one of the most competitive races in the country this year. I am so proud to be the first challenger in the country that Hakeem Jeffries has personally endorsed.
Nice.
Because he knows how important Virginia's 2nd District is to his future speakership and preventing a future Mike Johnson speakership. And let me tell you just a little bit, because I know we care so much about combating this MAGA extremism. Jen Kiggins has called Marjorie Taylor Greene a friend, a teammate, and that they want the same goals. She has, in this district with 60,000 veterans in it, she has voted to take away funding from the VA to prevent women in the military from accessing abortion care when they're stationed in a state that takes it away, and fully supportive of obviously Mike Johnson in his national abortion ban plans.
Right.
It's time to take this seat back.
I love that it is time to do that and really jump in the water and let's get activated for it. And it is so important when we look at the map in Virginia. A lot of folks are in different states that are in this room. We do have our national audience here, and we all are working together. Your seat is one of those seats we really want to make sure that we flip. And I think also we're real excited to make sure that we have women in leadership, because what we see with 11 districts in Virginia, a lot of them before 2018 were led by men, particularly white men. And so now look, folks, we got to flip the seat. We got to get some women into office so that, remain that's a big goal for us. So we're so glad you're here. And we're so glad you came to see us. And let's make sure that you tell people what they can do for you right now. Who wants to write postcards? Who wants to knock doors, folks? Put it in the chat. Put your info in, Missy. Tell people how to get in touch with you.
Wonderful. Yes. So we are putting in the chat right now links to volunteer. We're going to have a big Emily's List celebration in April. They have recently endorsed our campaign. They are very engaged here. We would love to invite anyone who's interested to join us when we have that scheduled. Feel free to text our campaign manager, Maddie Summers. She's in there. If anybody's willing to make a contribution, biggest fundraising deadline of the campaign is at the end of this month. So March 31st. So if you'd be willing and able, we would appreciate that. And we would just love to, Catherine, what a rock star, and Stair coming down, knocking doors, got to meet with Gabby Giffords. Mm-hmm. We will we will have a robust field program this year, and we would
Good.
love for all of you to be involved. I'm also going to just drop in there the Chesapeake Bay Commission report for anybody who has an interest. There will be a link to that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Missy, for being there. I know you got to get on the phones. I'm so excited. What a great show. And I want to say a big shout out to Carrie Short for putting this show together, and also for her wonderful rendition of Katie Britt, doing it just so well. And it's kind of scary because you were really good at it. And I think we're going to keep that tone, Okay. Let's get breathless with David Pepper. Folks in the room, we want to make sure we have a minute. And then I hope David's going to stay with us in the after chat. If you don't know David Pepper, he is awesome. He's a lawyer, writer, political activist. Welcome, David. Former elected official and adjunct professor, and the former chairman. He served as of the Ohio Democratic Party, and also just a prolific writer. And you look like what are you thinking about today, Dave? You have a lot on your mind.
Oh, I do. We have a crazy, and you know this, I think, because of your Ohio roots, but we have a crazy set of races in Ohio right now.
Let's talk about those, because I just want to say, I'm going to interrupt you. The Heimlich. Let's talk about the Heimlich, and let's talk about all the crazy stuff, because it relates to democracy. Let's make sure people understand anything happens in Virginia happens in Ohio.
Right.
You're a master class at this, that you have some ideas about this particular race that maybe some people are going, what are you doing, David, in this race?
Yeah, they are.
I know. So that's why I want to have you on about the
Yeah.
Republican race. Also, Sherrod Brown, the senator, we see the Democratic Party doing something weird. So it's like a flippery. I don't know what's going on in Ohio. So let's talk about it.
Crazy. Well, first of all, let me just say, I joined the call halfway through Carrie's presentation. So I didn't know that she was trying to beat Katie Britt. In about a minute, and I think this kind of sounds like, so I'm glad it was so effective. You actually fooled me. That was really good.
Little satire on the Friday Power Lunch. We're hip.
Well, it was going up and down, and the anger, then the joy. I mean, it was very well done. You totally fooled me.
And the
so what's
FPL
interesting,
Oscar goes to.
Yeah, the Emmy goes to.
So at the highest end, we have we have 3 people running for Sherrod's seat to take on Sherrod Brown.
Right, Senator Brown.
And JD Vance and Trump have endorsed one guy. And I don't want to get too into the details here, but it's basically all 3 of them. This is what's happening in Republican politics. All 3 of these candidates used to be moderate before Trump came along.
Right.
So there's all this evidence that each of them was moderate. And so every single campaign ad is each of the 3 putting photos of the other 2 next to photos of AOC and Biden and saying, look how moderate they were. And the truth is they were moderate. They all used to be moderate, and now they're pretending otherwise. So what's happening is these Republican voters are totally confused. Right now, the non-Trump candidate is winning because he's run the most. He's the guy who owns the Cleveland Indians, now Guardians. Oh, so he's basically
what's his name? Okay, so
Dolan's his name.
Okay, so the Democratic Party seems to be pushing this Bernie
there was a story, and I don't know much about it, but the view has been that Bernie Moreno, the Trump JD guy, is the most vulnerable in November.
Okay.
Now, there was a story that came out that that none of us knew about. Apparently, Republicans, I'm going to share it. It's quite eye-opening. Bernie Moreno, it looks like, and he's saying he's going to sue for defamation. Yesterday was, hold on, I'm trying to find this for you. Yeah. Yesterday, a story came out that he was on an adult website in 2008 looking for young men.
Oh,
the Trump endorsed, JD Vance endorsed candidate.
Okay.
I'm going to share that. I mean, he's saying it was an intern playing a prank on his parents' computer somewhere. It's very fun. So that's why I'm like, when you ask what I'm thinking about, it's going nuts here. And what's interesting is I do think in the end, and particularly that story turns out to be true, if Moreno does win the primary, it certainly, but either way, I think that's Sherrod's best opponent. But I also want to be clear, if the guy who's buying up the race, who runs the baseball team, wins, that's still a great contrast for Sherrod. Think about Sherrod always working hard for blue-collar workers, running against him and, the old area, all those blue-collar counties along the Lake Erie and everything else. So I think Sherrod, people ask me all the time, can Sherrod win? He can win. I mean, Biden has to keep it within single digits. Sherrod has a history of overperforming. And I think he has a pretty good matchup against all three of them. A poll came out the other day, the same poll that showed that the Trump guy was in second had Sherrod ahead of all three. Now, Sherrod wasn't in the 50s, so he's got a lot of work to do, but he was ahead. So so when you all watch next Tuesday, this has turned into so Trump's coming in on Sunday.
Oh, he is
trying to
coming
save this guy. He's coming to Dayton.
He's
But now the
going-
question is, sorry, go ahead.
No. So what we want to do is we want to hold that thought.
Okay, I know we're going to
One
after.
second, I thought you said Trump was coming into Date, and I was like,
No,
so
he's coming into Dayton. Yeah.
I'm teasing you. So what we want to do is tell the audience a few things and tell them that what we want to do is go to the after chat where we really want to talk about democracy with you, right?
We'll do that, yeah.
Yeah, we want to dig in. So just stay right with us. We're gonna don't move. We'll be right back. So
I'll be right here.
yeah, stay right there. So audience, we're gonna have a special after chat today. So stick with us. But we got to do a wrap up. So Carrie, go ahead and do the wrap up. And what's your takeaway? I mean,
Well,
Carrie,
of course, I always love hearing Simon. He always uplifts me, makes me, gives us a good dose of hopium and is always uplifting. One of the things that I kind of thought about when he was saying about the power of the grassroots, I think we're a known factor now in elections. It shouldn't surprise anyone. It shouldn't surprise anyone anymore. So I'm glad that Simon's working hard with the DCCC to get a structural change to make sure that we're at the table more. So I appreciate that. And I think it kind of reminds me of sort of like if I can just channel my finale here, but the whole metaphor of like aspen roots, like we're grassroots, maybe we're also aspen roots because, they're all connected. So like, as we're talking about coastal flooding and we're talking about all of these issues that are important to us, climate change is affecting everyone. What's connecting all of us is the grassroots. And you always see it every time that we have one of these calls, like every Friday, it rings true. And now that we've added the end of the month national call, really kind of helps us all see how our roots are all connected, just like those aspen trees. You point to an aspen tree, it's actually connected to the aspen tree, a quarter of a mile away because the roots are all connected. So it kind of made me think of that as we're talking about climate and just seeing all the people. And as Andrea had mentioned, that we're all connected. And then I guess the other thing that I would say, in terms of voter registration is that COVA Coalition down here, we have over 30 events where we're going to be registering voters. So we are well aware of the power of getting more people registered. But I think the other side of that power, and maybe Simon was alluding to this, I wasn't quite sure, but as a grassroots organization, it's a great way for us to recruit. Voter registration is an easy ask. It's much easier to ask people to register voters than to go canvassing. So I think that we should all be focusing on voter registration and voter education, because you can bring your neighbor to register voters much easier than you can bring her to canvass. So those are my big takeaways.
I think those are big. And I want to say that I also hope in the power in the after chat before we wrap up, I do want to make sure we say thank you to all of the guests. Like I said, Simon Rosenberg was here. We had Marjorie Mayfield Jackson from the River Project, Elizabeth River Project, Andria McClellan, the former Norfolk City Councilwoman, and Missy Smasal. It was great to have her in, and we really need to win that race. And I want to just do a little teaser for next week for those in the room. We're going to be really having a great show next week with Amy Deal, PhD of about a book on glass, breaking that glass ceiling, the barriers that do exist. Delegate Vivian Watts and some other great guests talking about leadership. And I'm glad Scary Carrie is gone. And nice Carrie.
But I'm glad to hear that I did well. I'm just sorry my green shirt did not arrive from Amazon in time for the skit. But that's okay.
Oh, it's okay.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, thanks, Obama. Yeah, you kind of scared even David. And I want to say that as we go on the other side, talking about, I'm hoping that some of our people from the Grassroots Coalition are here to talk about some of the bills that Governor Youngkin has, has about the environment, has vetoed already. So we want to talk about that. And I know Amy Bergender may be here. Bergner may be here from the Grassroots Coalition to tell us about that. But we're going to start with David. Let's run credits. And thank you to everybody being here. And let's listen to David on the other side in the after chat. And we can stay live too if you want, Stair. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
See you
for
on the other
everyone.
side.
Thanks to everyone.
So excited. Let's go.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, I am excited.
Okay, so everybody knows Republicans don't care about scandal.
Well, the Republicans, don't care about anything.
Friday Power Lunch After Chat prides itself on being a community that is respectful of different points of view. We encourage them, but just a reminder, the After Chat is a place where we are courteous and respectful to others. We all know what that looks like.
Excuse me.
To be part of this community, each one of us commits to making this a safe and supportive environment. Let's get this After Chat started.
All right, folks, put your hands down for a second, or we're going to start off with David Pepper. So David, can you spotlight? Yeah, I can find David. Spotlight him. Hi, and I'm going to spotlight me too, if you can, Stephanie. There we go, real quick. I want to open up the power chat with you. This is our audience where they can ask you questions too, which is great. So if you have a question for David, you can raise your hand. If you don't have a question pertaining to David, just hold your thoughts we can get to you. So let's just keep unpacking Ohio. And I watched you on a couple, I feel like Ohio's kind of a signal of sort of what Republicans are doing. I mean, I don't know if people really understand a little background on Ohio. If you want to give it real quick, where this all gerrymandered started, and also what you're seeing, like, for instance, in the voucher program, a lot of stuff seems to get test case over there. So
when I wrote this book, Laboratories of Autocracy, I wasn't exaggerating. They use red states, and I'm so glad for you. You flipped last year, so you're not stuck being one. They run little experiments in all these states, and if something works somewhere, they bring it somewhere else. And so if it's the Don't Say Gay bill passing in Florida, 2 months later, it's in Ohio. And I put this up on I do a Substack if folks are interested. I did one yesterday.
Yes.
This universalization of private school vouchers is a catastrophe. And it's happening everywhere. You know, there was the old, this is to help urban kids get to a better school in a poor district, in an underperforming district. And that had some obviously empathy to it. And it was designed then in a very narrow way. Well, in recent years, in many states, it's this, I think, one of the biggest stories in America right now. They've gotten rid of all the restrictions. And what happens when you give money away for free? Well, what's happened is almost all the voucher users now are families who were already in private school, who could already afford the private school, going to the same private school they already were going to. And what's happening is the costs are exploding. It's also disproportionately white. It's not the old, helping kids in urban areas. And it's basically become a massive subsidy for people who are already going to private school. And I put that out yesterday. The reason it's a national story is because the numbers in Ohio, it's exactly what we're seeing in Georgia, in Missouri, Arizona, in Texas, Florida. And every red state is doing it. And it basically exposes that the old sort of justification was never what the real goal was. The goal is basically destroying private and public education.
Right. And
voucherizing and literally subsidizing private, largely religious education. And it's a disaster. And Ohio's already been through the ringer. Our public schools were ranked 5th in the nation a few years ago 2010. We're now ranked in the mid-20s. All this stuff has killed us, like for-profit charters, online ripoffs, and now this. And they just put in these gerrymandered states, they can keep doing bad things and never be voted out of office. So they keep doubling down on all things that are failing. And I worry the universalization of vouchers is actually the most explosive of all of them. And the numbers already are showing that. I'm going to share this Substack in a video that I did yesterday. Even Jane Mayer, who I've gotten to know, she retweeted this yesterday because she said, oh my gosh, these numbers are so stunning. I'm just happy for you that my hope is with Democrats in your legislature, you don't get stuck with this, but all over Missouri, Tennessee, they're all doing it. And their goal is to do this. It's not like this is a bug.
Right.
Once you get rid of all the restrictions, this is inevitably what's going to happen. And it's a terrible case study right here in Ohio.
Well, it is. And I think long term, when we look at public education and how kids learn and civic engagement, and if you destroy public education, I mean, that's the foundation of democracy, how everybody can have access to an education. And if people get to watch David's whiteboard yesterday, which I enjoyed, you really did show the places where those vouchers were being used. It really didn't decrease the enrollment in the public education, but what you were showing is just that those people that already had money were using that money to pay for their private, probably religious schools or whatever, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. To their credit, I think mainstream journalists are starting to figure this out, which is good. It's been advocates for a long time, no one listening. In the suburban communities around Cleveland, they looked at, okay, 600 more vouchers are being used this year than last year in this nice suburb, but only 10 kids left the public school, meaning almost every single person who used that voucher was already at that private school. But the other thing that came out of the Cleveland, and this is what I highlighted, the other thing that came out is that's happening.
Right.
But by far the biggest use of the vouchers are in the wealthiest communities of Ohio.
Right.
And largely because there aren't private even schools in most of there's nothing in rural Ohio but the public school. That's why rural Republicans, that's why rural Republicans, though, in Texas and Georgia voted no.
Exactly.
They're subsidizing well-off suburbs getting private education. So here's the opportunity long-term. The long-term, I hope. This, if people see it, I think will prove to be very unpopular, in fact, toxic, because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And people do, in the end, support their public schools. And so that's why all the Moms of Liberty candidates did so badly last November.
Right.
So I think if we expose this and make it clear what this is, and it's not that old narrative, I actually think it becomes an opportunity in states like Ohio to actually beat Republicans in rural areas, not only where we often compete, but actually in rural areas, because they're now subsidizing private educations of well-off folks in suburbs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem when you see. We watch Jess Piper, who talks a lot about in Missouri. She's part of the blue rural Democrat coalition. You saw in Tennessee. We know the rural Republicans really understand that vouchers will hurt their towns and their towns, and so that's. But yeah, it's a good exposure. But so before, just to have a few minutes with you to talk about what I want to talk about is the race, because I feel like what you always point out is when fighting for democracy, you can't leave any kind of thing off the table. So there's a little controversy because you looked at a race and the Democrats running unopposed in it, but the Republican primary with Paul Heimlich is pretty large, maybe 12 people. Yeah. He's one of the normal guys. You actually ran against him. Paul. He's actually named after the Heimlich maneuver. But why I want to talk about it is sometimes in politics right now, or in looking at ways to help with democracy, we do have to get a little creative. So talk about what you want.
Sure.
What are we thinking about there? And then in general, though, when that conflicts kind of with the party's idea, what they're doing, getting involved in some races, you know what I mean? Like what the heck?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And my attitude is my priority is those who listen to me. And like, I think most of you, it's democracy.
Right.
We are in an existential battle over democracy. Right. And if we simply do the same old, we could lose it. So when I see an 11-person primary in a Republican, in a deep red gerrymandered Republican district, and there are 11, not 2 or 3, but 11. And one of those 11 who I did run against, and I beat him. He's the son of the inventor of the Heimlich maneuver, believe it or not. His name is Phil, not Paul, but he's his son, and he was quite conservative. But since 2017, this guy has actually been not just pretty good, incredible, speaking out up against Trump. He's written op-eds. Before Cheney did it, before Kinzinger did it, this guy who I happen to beat has said, Trump offends my values as a Republican. He lies. He's not a patriot. He engaged in the big lie. He has said it to Republican audience for 6 or 7 years. So if he's in the primary, and by the way, I support the Democrat in the other side, but let's be honest, she's probably not going to win. It's a very gerrymandered Republican district. So my attitude looking at that race is, anyone who's not a diehard Democrat who will vote in the Democratic primary, if you care about democracy,
Go vote for him.
you could actually elect a anti-MAGA, pro-democracy Republican who will spend the next 6 months ripping on Donald Trump as a guy who just won a primary in Southern Ohio, and if elected in November, would be a vote to certify a Biden win in January. So even though I'm the former Democratic chair and this guy was my former opponent, I'm going to tell people about it. A few people, Democrats, that's so outside their comfort zone, they ask me what I'm doing. And the answer is, I'm fighting for democracy here. And this is such a clear case. Right. And by the way, he may not be able to win. I don't know. But when there are 11 people, right, and 10 of them are in the MAGA lane, and Nikki Haley's lane was like 30 to 40%. And if he gets half that, he may win the election. So my attitude was, I'm not going to just sit here and this is a district I know well. I literally, my wife grew up. It's rural. It's poor. It hasn't had a real representative in years. Right. And the goofballs running against him, I mean, they're running insane ads about MAGA and walls, all of it. One guy's got a flamethrower. He's apparently going to torch Biden's. And this district doesn't need that. So that's why I spoke up. And I actually think it's a case study that let's be strategic. Yeah. And if there's an opportunity to get we want Republicans to do the right thing, right? Right. We want them to do the right thing. When they do the right thing, let's at least take a moment and say, hey, Phil, thank you for actually standing for democracy, even though every time you do, you probably get so much hate mail. I don't even want to think about it. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do in this case. I don't know what's going to happen. I think we're in feels like the right thing to do, though. Yeah, I think we're in a new territory. I mean, you and I both from Ohio. I think watching our state go, and because the gerrymandering problem is really a problem, people are kind of trapped in these districts. But I look at just looking for good people, right? Republican, Democrat, what good people that are strong in democracy. I know we've had to do that even in some races. When we looked at school board people, we saw that, taking Republican, Democrat off, but looking at pro-education candidates, they can win, and I think that's what some people had to do in certain districts. And I think that's okay. I mean, the thing is, it just matters too how they support education, and then if they can win the district. But moving on to that, I don't know if there's anything else on your mind. Then I'll have to jump in a couple minutes if that's okay. Go ahead. Yeah. If there's anybody that has let's go to one more question. Anybody has a question? Frida, you have your hand up. Do you have a question for David Pepper? Frida's from a rural area, but she has her hand up. Who knows? But I said if you had your hand up, you have a question. So go right ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Frida. Okay, so this sometimes happens where people have to unmute themselves. But anyways, I will just go ahead and let you go. And I appreciate you stayed long with us. It's always good to see you. And I will be contacting you because we're going to be doing our Women's Summit. It will be June 28th through the 30th. And I'd love if you can drive down and join us. But I'll send Virginia? Okay. In Virginia. Yeah, I still want to do something in person. In person is so much more fun these days with the
yeah, it's in person, and it's at the event in Leesburg, Virginia. And I think Simon will be coming. We're still getting our act together on that, but save that, write it down. June 28th, 29th, 30th, Virginia. Okay, David, thank you.
Thanks for all you do. You guys are no one better in the country doing the activism you're doing. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, Mr. Pepper. All right, take the spotlight off of me and let's